Oi, oi, it's your boy, the man who prayed ye to show us the way chi in the church of Gaethje. Jack Slack, it's the Jack Slack podcast, and we're coming at you after UFC Freedom 250, Epstein Island. Well, Welchy, well. Justin Gaethje, undisputed UFC champion. Who'd have thought? Who'd have thunk? If you're a lapsed Gaethjean like me, from the days when he was throwing low kicks in the clinch, and you're going, "Oh, what an exciting fighter!" This one hits really hard, particularly because I have spent years. One of our religious practices, in fact, has been that I lead the mass, and there's a point in our mass where I say, "For he hath a great jab," and the congregation all turn to each other and shake hands and say, "That he never useth." And yet, today, or yesterday, he did useth that jab, and he did smote Ilia Topuria on the snoot until he were struck blind and domed with right hands. If you missed my pre-fight preview, in fact, the bit that I put up as a preview for the non-paying boys, the plebeians, I put up how could Justin Gaethje win this fight. And it's something I've been getting away from in recent years just because of the nature of podcasts and because of the shit nature of a lot of these events. I've been getting away from how could so-and-so win? How could so-and-so have won when they lose? And I've started bringing that back. I did it with the Song Yadong card and I did it before this card. And half the time, I never ever predict fights, but half the time when something crazy does happen, I've normally talked about that eventuality. My ideas for how to get Justin Gaethje into this fight were to back Topuria up. So in order to establish the jab, because I thought establishing the jab while going backwards is tricky. So back him up with collar tie uppercuts and so on without getting chinned coming in, because he always comes in the same way. Then establish the jab and then hopefully get the low kicks off. And every time we've ever talked about Justin Gaethje, I've always talked about how he does have a redonkulous jab. And I know that because I've seen it. And it's exactly like Cody Garbrandt. I have seen his jab. I know he has a great jab. It annoys me that he won't use it. There are lots of fighters who don't have a great jab. And you go, oh, with that power, if he could just build a jab. Because Justin Gaethje, like I said, top 5, maybe top 3 hitters ever for power in the lightweight division. Him, maybe Gomi. Actual thunderous hitters. One punch break your face sort of hitters. And Gomi had the same thing where he starts punching and he gets on roller skates. His feet are slipping out from under him. But with Gaethje, there was always this thing where he trains with Trevor Whitman, who's been trying for years to make him into a technical striker. And when the moments of technique shine through, and he actually trusts what he's been doing for months and years at this point, a little bit, it really is special. Because he does have bricks in his fists, and he has bricks in his fists in the way that if you taught him to box normally, well, you saw it with Ilia Topuria. Within a round, Ilia Topuria's face was swelling up from jabs. Talking about like the Sonny Liston, George Foreman walked into a telephone pole sort of jab. And if you're completely new to the idea of combat sports, maybe you are. Maybe you were like, oh, I hate President Trump and I'm going to tune in. Oh, these fights are pretty good. I might look into MMA now. Well, first, bad news. It's not normally like that. It's been shit for 5 months because they've been trying to stack this card. And also because they're just phoning it in really hard at the moment. Roster of 1,000 fighters because they don't want to pay the 300 good ones more. But you might not know, the jab is important because it's out there on the front of your stance. It's the quickest thing to get to the opponent. Obviously, it's not the longest in a kickboxing type sport because the legs are longer. But when you throw a strike with your legs, you get on one foot and you lock yourself down for a minute. So if you do miss, if they do step up the middle, you're stuck in one place. The jab is the nice middle ground where you can move while you're throwing it. The downside is it's not nearly as powerful as any of the other punches, the power punches as they call them. But if you have natural power and you can jab in a way that really hurts people, why would you not just go to the easiest thing to throw and land over and over and over again? Why? Because you're Justin Gaethje and you like to just get in there and spaz out. You like to get a bit redacted. If you saw that Paddy Pimblett fight, he's just walking forwards and trying to slip down to his right, grab the head and uppercut. And that punch is monstrous. He's phenomenal with that punch. but there's a giant hole where he slips the same way every time to close the distance. And even Paddy Pimblett saw it on the film, starts throwing the uppercut across his body to about 10 o'clock, right uppercut to 10 o'clock, and he keeps chinning Justin Gaethje, and you're going, Paddy isn't a good striker. But because it's the same thing every time, it's not a case of having to read him. It's not a case of having to do anything clever. It's a case of, oh, I practiced this. I'll just do it every time he comes in. Landed some knees there too. In this fight, the jab and the post-single level change, whatever you want to call it, made the collar tie uppercut 100 times as potent. So the last time we saw Gaethje's jab looking good, well, actually there were bits against Holloway where you're like, damn, why not jab, mate? It's actually working quite well. And then there were bits against Fiziev. He had one round of just beautiful jabbing against Fiziev. And in the Fiziev fight, he jabbed, dipped, and entered on the uppercut that way, the collar tie and the uppercut. And he thought, if you did that every time, that would be the moneyest combination in mixed martial arts. In this fight, he was actually able to do that. Jab and dip, which is just good practice anyway, because if you jab, you know that you're close enough to that the opponent will jab back, probably. And if you move your head immediately after your jab, you've got a great chance of slipping it and getting inside and starting to hit them while their elbows are away from their body, out of position. And then the other one was the post single, which is where, well, the post single is a little bit different. If you post on the guy with your lead hand and you reach behind his knee. Bo Nickal did it against Kyle Daukaus on this card, and Frankie Edgar did it all the time. But it's a way to commit to a takedown while still sort of being in boxing mode. Gaethje was doing better than that. He was actually getting like elbow deep on the leg. But the guy has to respect that, pull his leg back, his head will come forward, and you can grab that collar tie and uppercut him. And this is the thing, Gaethje, it's been the jab and the wrestling. Why? You've got a great jab. Why don't you ever use your jab? You've got NCAA. You're the only NCAA Division 1 All-American from your state ever, I think. Or something like that. It is ridiculous, the stat about him. But he never wrestles because he gets tired, or he says it tires him out. But the great thing about like wrestling in your boxing in this way is that you're not desperately trying to get a hold of someone, drag them down, and hold them down. But if they don't defend it, you'll just knock them over and then hold top position for a bit while they try and get up. So if you approach it in that way, they have to defend, you get the collar tie, you uppercut them. So those two things, jab and the level change into the single leg / post single, worked phenomenally in this fight. First round, he spent most of the fight jabbing and retreating. Ilya was putting him under pressure, but he was doing fantastic work. And then in the second round, he got caught a bit, and we got Whitman's corner work between rounds, and Gaethje talked about it afterwards, but he said Whitman told him don't jab going backwards, which is a good rule. If you jab going backwards, you tend to, in the like most basic sense of jabbing going backwards, you tend to throw a powerless punch out there, which gives them more openings than it generates like defense for you. So Junior Dos Santos in MMA was really guilty of this. Both his second and third fight with Cain Velasquez, he gets really badly hurt because he's backing up as Cain Velasquez is coming in, and he pokes out the jab like, I just want to touch him for no reason. And it leaves a big opening for Cain to throw the overhand across the top. So a jab and a good exchange is like lower on the risk end, and then the reward's not super high, but there's not an awful lot of risk. If you're jabbing while you're moving backwards and there's not really any power to stop them, you're putting more risk on it and you're getting even less reward. There are a few fighters who've been good at jamming going backwards. Women's talked about this in videos before, but like, who else have I seen teach it? Russ Amber in some old tapes back in the day used to teach it. But like, lean back, and as you step back, you pop your you lean your shoulders forward and pop your jab, so you get a bit more stank on it. So that's a real timing thing. Like low kicking going backwards, it's a timing thing. You got to get ahead of the guy, read him, run him onto a stiff punch. You can't just like back up pumping the jab, which Gaethje was doing a little bit in the first round. There have been a couple of guys who've been able to do that thing where you just jab with your lead hand as you extend your rear foot behind you. So you're stretching out your stance on the spot. But the guys I think of when I think of who was good at that, Foreman, one of the hardest punchers ever, Teofilo Stevenson, 6'5" heavyweight, big old dude. And he'd come back with the right hand off that. Like what he did was he put the jab out to blind you and then rebounded off his back foot to hit you with the right hand. I think it was John Tate he really hurt with that in the Olympics one year. So yes, that was really good corner advice from Whitman because it was working, jabbing going backwards or jabbing at, retreating and trying to jab. But Ilya was also catching him across the top with the right hand because Ilya will take the jab to land a good counter. He was doing that against Max Holloway and against Volk. The Volk fight is the perfect example of when not to jab. Volk was doing a lot of bad jabbing in that fight, where a lot of the time his jab's very authoritative. Like when he's, third fight with Max, he's really lancing him with the jab. But in the Ilya fight, he gets into like up on his toes, going backwards, circling around to his left and just pumping a jab for the sake of pumping the jab. There's no power behind it. There's nothing to stop the guy coming in. A jab is not a power punch, but there's supposed to be a stiffness there that stops the guy just walking through it. So a lot of it was this jab and then falling into the collar tie and uppercutting. Topuria was trying to time the right hand across the top, which has always worked great for him. He was trying to time the right hand underneath to the body, which worked really well. And then in the second round, he managed to hurt Gaethje, move him to the cage, and Gaethje did his double forearms cover up, which he's always done. He used to be blind, and he did that, and then he had laser surgery, and he actually can fight. Like, he can actually see things coming now. But back in the day when I was first covering, he was doing this all the time. He'll get his elbows up really high. He doesn't defend his body at all, and he ducks his head forward. And to deal with uppercuts, he turns his shoulders while he's bent in half, basically. Turns his shoulders so that his elbow goes into the line of the uppercut. And that worked a few times here. If you saw Topuria was grabbing him and throwing the uppercut, and the elbow would hit him right in the forearm or wrist as he was coming up with the uppercut. And that's a great way to jam uppercuts, but he was getting hit in the body loads. The uppercut was doing enough to keep him covering up. The really high guard meant that he was really easy to hit in the body. And he got hit with a left hook to the body that dropped him. And I was laughing at this because if you go back and watch the knockdown side by side, this is as bad as the Zahabi knockdown. It obviously wasn't to the head, it was to the body, but he basically goes fetal and can't move, which happens when you get hit in the body really well, particularly the liver. But Topuria obviously is a killer, and he moved in to finish him. He starts taking top position, starts trying to get something good off it for a finish. O'Malley salutes and walks away, and Zahabi's bouncing up by the time the referee stops it. I've talked about this for years, like walk-off knockouts. If you score one and you get a reputation for it, every other knockout is going to be easier because you don't have to follow up. A lot of the time in these fights, like if you've watched any MMA for any length of time, you have seen loads of guys get dropped and you go, oh my God, he's done here. And then the guy gets tired trying to finish him. And that's what happened to Topuria. He fucking gassed the fuck out at the end of round 2. But man, his transitions are so gorgeous. I really wish he went to his wrestling more offensively. He's fallen in love with his hands, which, you know, he's got great hands. He's done a really good job developing them. He used to be like a full-on grappler all the time, but his transitions in this one, he immediately mounts Gaethje from half guard. Gaethje starts trying to turn because he's getting elbowed from mount. Tries to give his back in the Derek Lewis sort of way we'll talk about later. Topuria gets a half Nelson on him and goes, get the fuck back down, starts pushing him back down to his back. Gaethje's still trying to turn, so Topuria jumps up to start looking for the armbar. That half Nelson into armbar is something that I talked about this a couple of times. Ronda Rousey's mum put out a book when Rousey was at the height of her popularity called Winning on the Ground. And it was a very judo-centric approach to ground fighting. But basically everything ends in the armbar. And the two moves that she says are like the most important on the ground in judo and in grappling in MMA for her are the half Nelson and the armbar. Half Nelson for turning people, armbar for finishing people. But armbar comes off the half Nelson quite a lot, particularly from mount if the guy's trying to turn away, which doesn't happen so much in like pure grappling. But as soon as you start hitting the dude, he's going to turn because he wants to get to a position where he can actually do something. Fedor was good at armbarring people off the half Nelson. Minoru Suzuki. Go watch my video, A Filthy Casual's Guide to Minoru Suzuki. He used to do it all the time. There were some beautiful transitions in this. He went to the mounted triangle, which is how Habib finished Justin. And to be fair to Justin, he gets mounted triangle. He ends up with Topuria switching off. He pops his head out and Topuria's trying to switch off to the armbar. He ends up rolling him over the top, which is crazy. It slips his head out again. Basically survived, which was good because obviously the criticism of Gaethje is always that his grappling sucks. But I thought in his second fight with Fiziev, there were some really positive signs there because he pursued a couple of takedowns and he also got up off the bottom really well when Fiziev took him down. So between rounds, Whitman gives him that advice. He says, get going forward. Start pressuring him. No more backwards. He says, press him and time him and low kick. And immediately, Gaethje comes out and pushes straight into a collar tie clinch. Just a single collar tie and leans on Topuria. And Topuria has to defend himself, has to like fight for his posture, has to not be pushed around. And then Topuria's on the back foot. And I think it's partly due to being gassed from the previous round, his energy expenditure. But it was also due to the fact that Gaethje came out and just said no. And threatened him with the collar tie and the uppercut, which is really, it's a strong move for him. In fact, he had that collar tie and Topuria was holding a collar tie and like folding the arm across himself so he couldn't be uppercutted. And Gaethje used his lead knee to hit him in the ribs. And it was beautiful. He made Topuria take a run backwards after that. He tried to establish the low kick right away after that. and Topuria immediately blasted right hand up the middle, which is how Topuria's been dealing with it. If you try and low kick him, he's just going to try and walk through it and blast you in the head. And that's how Fedor used to deal with it, how Vovchanchin used to deal with it. Yeah, you can get really badly hurt if you time it wrong because you'll be eating the low kicks, but it adds high stakes to every time the guy throws the low kick. If you say, I'm going to walk through you with punches. Oh, I also like that step-up high kick that Gaethje was doing. People were saying in the preview I didn't mention high kicks at all, even though Jai Herbert had success with it against Topuria. And Topuria's right hand is always going to be where you're going to be able to catch him on the open side. But I didn't think it was Gaethje's an orthodox fighter. His high kick against Poirier was a right leg high kick that he threw up from miles away, but landed because no one expected any high kicks from him. But in this one, he really was doing it very well. He was coming out of clinches and throwing up the step-up high kick. It was clearly something that Whitman had drilled into him. Like, might as well try it. He level changes a lot. His right hand is away from home a lot. His right hand, he doesn't hide his chin behind his right shoulder. He hides behind his left shoulder. You can't hide it behind both shoulders at once. So the right side is always what's going to be open for Topuria. So by getting him going backwards, he's able to keep the jab going, and he double jabs and lands the right hand, stuns Topuria. Really gorgeous stuff. He goes in with his Groenhart knees, the little double run up flying knee, pump your right leg and then jump in with your left leg. He's been doing those back since World Series of Fighting. I call it the Groenhart knee because Myrtle Groenhart used to do it in Glory basically for every initiation of every exchange. But if you do it when the guy's heading towards the fence, you take away his retreat. We'll be talking about that loads with Michael Chandler later, or rather with Ruffy later. If you want to try a high-stakes technique, the number one thing that can go wrong is them retreating. If you put them in a position where they have to, they have to zig instead of zagging, they have to get the right one. If you're out in the open, they can retreat and anything you try will fail. If you put them against the fence, they now have 50% chance of getting mullered by anything you do. So the doctor almost stops the fight between the third and fourth round. There was one in this one. The piece I wrote last week on Jose Torre versus Eddie Cotton back in 1966. Torre, peekaboo fighter, Customato trained, beautiful head movement, great at getting under jabs and stuff. And Eddie Cotton, really smooth old timer. He's using the jab to get the head moving, and he's recognizing the pattern and throwing the right hand to wherever Torre's head goes. So the form on the right hand always looks shit because it's not a beautiful, fully extended right hand thrown towards your center line. It's a right hand thrown to where it needs to be. So the form always looks awful, but these weird right hands where they're way down by his hips or whatever, he really hurts Torre in the way that the straight up, beautiful right hand thrown to 12 o'clock straight down the center doesn't work. And there was one in this one where Topuria he went in for a right straight to the body, which he'd been having good success with under the jab, or taking the jab and doing it underneath. And he went in and Gaethje hit him with a short right hand on the eyeball, and then he lingered and he hit him with another short right hand on the eyeball. And neither was a full right hand like the ones he'd been hammering Topuria with out in the open. But Topuria stopped and felt his skull. He was like, oh my God, that really hurt. Trying to feel around his eye socket. And that's when he really started to swell up on the other side, on that left side. And I was talking about Gaethje using his wrestling, but he got the clinch in that round. He hit a knee and he did a sag throw. And just everything about this fight was great. I think everyone's taken away the lesson that, Topuria would have lost easily to Islam Makhachev. And I'm just the southpaw Islam Makhachev, who doesn't use his jab all that much and doesn't have hands made of bricks and would be fighting in a very different way to Justin Gaethje. I just don't take that lesson away from this. I would love to see that fight still, but everyone's down on Topuria's performance, but he got sag thrown and he immediately hit a ghost escape back out to the quad pod. Look up what those things are, but basically he dug his arm underneath Gaethje's armpit before they settled on the floor and immediately rolled and got up. And then he tripped Gaethje later, and Gaethje did the ghost escape and got up to his hands and knees. I think Topuria was behind him on that one, but so cool. By the fourth round, Gaethje had sort of got a leverage guard down, which is a really useful and important technique that looks ugly as shit. But when you throw your jab, if you miss, if the guy slips inside like he wants to and throws his right hand across the top, that's really bad for you. If you throw your jab left of where you were originally starting, or left of where their head started, and then the guy dips to the inside and throws his overhand across the top, your forearm, elbow, upper arm, and shoulder are all in the way of his punch, and your forearm and elbow are going to get into the crook of his elbow. So it's a great way of people don't see it. It looks just messy in the middle of a fight, but it works so well, particularly in MMA, because you let the guy throw his overhand. It runs out of steam because his elbow, the crook of his elbow ends up over your elbow and forearm, and then you grab his head with the same hand and uppercut him. And Gaethje was having massive success with that in the 4th round. And then Topuria shot a really bad takedown. Gaethje ended up on top and started trying to land those little punches from the sprawl, which he was sharing on his Instagram. I know someone training there was sharing on their Instagram, but Gaethje's been working on that. He was doing it against Paddy Pimblett. It was one of the few looks in that fight that I was like, that's not a regression in Gaethje. But like, he gets the front headlock, pulls people down, and then tries to punch them from under the armpit, which, if you remember Dan Henderson versus Fedor, that one put Fedor out very briefly, but it put him out. And there's been a few other notable ones where guys have been hit blind underneath the armpit and really hurt. And you can punch it through and go straight to the DAS, which is what Gaethje was looking for in like the 2nd round or 3rd round. So a marvelous performance by Justin Gaethje. I think it's so easy when someone's doing well to like blind yourself to what they haven't shown you. And it's so easy when someone loses to just be like, well, they would have lost to Makhachev or whatever. We're always finding out more in these fights. Justin Gaethje was a massive underdog in this one. But if you came in the 3rd round, you'd be going like, damn, there's no way he could lose this. You just got to look at every fight like, how could someone win this? And if they have, whenever I'm doing this, like, how could so-and-so win this? There's always the way where you try and think about, like, what could they do with things you've seen that they have? And then, you start talking about stuff like maybe they could have developed. Maybe they have and we haven't seen it yet. There's no way, like, we're watching Justin Gaethje, and if I'm going like, well, if he had a really good front kick, and it's like, well, he's never shown he's got a really good front kick, so what's the point? Or if he had a really good Osotogare from the clinch, just like, never seen it from him. No point. But I have seen him jab before, just frustratingly little. And I said in my preview, I would just love to see him put some faith in that and in what Whitman's been trying to coach him to do for, 2 decades at this point. And fair play to him, he did. For Trevor Whitman, it must feel great to finally get this cap on Justin Gaethje's career when he's like 38 years old and he's talking about not doing many more fights, but he finally got it, the big one. But you've got to hold yourself back because there's got to be such a level of I told you so. Just, I've been begging you to jab it's got to be decades at this point now. And the moment that you start focusing on that jab, not only does that jab break the guy's face and make everything else possible, but it opens up the uppercut that was so monotonous in your last fight. It opens up all these openings for everything else. And you wrestled a bit. It's crazy that Justin Gaethje has had all these little things that other fighters would kill to have, and he's just not been using them. Because he's got bricks in his hands and, like I said last time, he knows how his bread's buttered. You go out there and you have exciting fights to make money. How would you have won if you were Ilia Topuria? This is an interesting question. I did like how Ilia Topuria was getting to work with his right low kick at points in the 1st round. In the first 2 rounds, Gaethje was circling way too much to Gaethje's left, Topuria's right. And Topuria was pushing him into the fence. And that's how Topuria domed Volkanovski and Max Holloway. Right hand across the top as they're circling. I keep saying it's so basic, but it's so much better than just an overhand. Millions of times better. I joked about Ilia Topuria being Roy Nelson in the lightweight division, but that strategy, that tactic of just, he did it almost exclusively, so it was a strategy, but walk the guy to the cage, make him circle to your right, and throw the overhand as hard as you can. It's incredibly effective. If you watched Beterbiev versus Bivol 1 or 2, I can't remember which one it was, that was like Beterbiev's entire output. Just trying to catch him circling the one way. And you can make them circle that way by bringing yourself closer to the fence on your left. You can make them circle through the right hand. And Topuria's had great success with the right low kick when the guy circles too wide. If he hasn't managed to get close enough to land him to throw the overhand across the top, he can chop that lead leg as they pivot around it, and that really does have an outsized effect on the opponent. Like I said, he's threw 4 low kicks against Volk and 6 against Max, but he timed them really well. And because they landed at a really good time when the guy was pivoting on the leg, they had a much bigger effect than if he'd thrown 20 just as the guy was standing there. I would have loved to see Topuria use level changes to set up his boxing, as in level changes into the legs. He was doing level changes to punch the body, but then Gaethje was just punching back. Had he been reaching for legs, I think he'd have been doing a better job of making Gaethje defensive rather than counter-offensive in those moments. And I will say Gaethje's reaching for the legs. It was legit when Gaethje was doing it. Even though we know that he doesn't want to wrestle that much, he was still threatening the leg. Whereas you watch like Jiri versus Pereira, was it 2? Where he's slapping the leg and coming up with the uppercut. And Pereira doesn't buy it at all that he wants to take him down. I had a coach once say to me, when I was trying the most half-assed shot, he said, if you don't buy it, I'm not buying it. It was just the worst shot you've ever seen because I was like, I want it attached to the leg and pull guard. This was just grappling. Obviously, you would never pull guard. Well, I don't know. I just watched Mike Davies versus Ziam, and he did a decent job pulling guard in an MMA match. But back to Topuria, yeah, I think some actual level changes, because the only level change he really did to attack the legs was late when he shot and ended up underneath Gaethje. When you are the shorter fighter, one of the few advantages you get is on the level change. You can be quicker doing that, which he uses. He uses it in his boxing. He level changes to throw the right straight to the body. He level changes to jab to the body. He often level changes to throw the left hook to the body. But level changing to attack the legs does add that extra dimension to it. Just the offensive wrestling has been missing from Topuria a lot lately. He did use it in the Max Holloway fight, and I really thought that was a nice idea, just to put more pressure on Max and say, look, I'm happy in 2 aspects of this game, and you are only dealing with the striking. I think he was absolutely shocked by the jab, even though he would have, if they watched the film, they'd have seen that Gaethje does have a good jab, but they would have assumed he wasn't ever going to use it like I did, and everyone else who knew he had a good jab was like, it's a shame he never uses it. But I think once you realize the guy's jabbing you so successfully, he was so committed to counter-punching through it, when I think he could have taken a step back and just let that right hand come away from his guard, put it on Gaethje's lead hand, and try and take the jab out of action for a little while, just to see what happens from there. Might be that Gaethje just isn't able to jab and and leaves your hand free to jab, which then you can force his head movement and try and time him with the uppercut and stuff. Or it might be that he reaches out with his right hand and you end up in like a double hand fight, which nullifies both men's jabs, but at least makes the fight different. So now you're doing turnover elbows, you're stepping into knees, you're low kicking, you're doing loads of other stuff that isn't a boxing match that you're losing by him having a much better jab and bricks for hands. And I say that as a tactic there because he was clearly having trouble timing it. If you watch the Holloway Topuria fight, he landed very successfully at several points with the inside parry. So he used his left hand on the inside of Holloway's jab to then throw the right hand across the top. I don't think I saw him come close on that. All the right hands he landed across the top were after getting his head jacked back by the jab. He never parried it and got inside in the same way that he did against Max. So at that point, I would have said, step back, check the jab, make him either commit to like the left hook off the bat, which is way easier to see, or start kicking him, slow the fight down, take the jab away. But then to do that, you have to admit that you are having trouble and you are trying to deal with the other guy. You're trying to nullify the other guy's game rather than getting your game going, which can be like ego death for the MMA fighter. I did think his bodywork was sensational in this fight, because in previous fights I've been like, I love when he goes to the body. I wish he'd do it more. And he really did commit to it in a big way in this one. It's just that the jab was proving such a problem for him. And the uppercut was also working very well when he lingered, when he stuck around too long off the body shots. So really great fight. Honestly, like you couldn't ask for a better main event when everyone was so down on it, myself included. What else we got? Co-main event, Alex Pereira versus Cyril Gane. This one, I think a lot more people saw coming in this way. In my preview, I said Gane should just fight southpaw. He's a switch hitter, but just fight southpaw, and he did. He just stuck to southpaw for this one. Pereira has had trouble with southpaws. He doesn't like southpaws. He doesn't like the southpaw hand fight. And if you noticed in his fights with Khalil, if you noticed in his fights with Izzy, he had a lot of trouble when Izzy went southpaw and used the hand fight. Obviously, famously, Magomed Ankalaev had great success as a southpaw, trying to eliminate his lead hand. Against Jamal Hill and Khalil Roundtree, when they went southpaw and tried to hand fight with him, this was fresh off the knockout loss to Izzy. He immediately threw the right high kick. In fact, in the second match with Izzy, he threw the right high kick immediately when Izzy started hand fighting, because it's a way to go fuck off, and then he takes a step back and hopefully doesn't hand fight again. Or you can time like leaping the left hook across the top. If you watch the Jamal Hill fight, it was a left hook around that lead hand that he leapt into. And that's how he got knocked out in this. When he was walking forward with his hand down, ready to leap into the left hook, and he walked straight onto a right jab that had been hitting him the whole time. In the Izzy fights, he got knocked down in both fights a couple of times, or hurt in both fights a couple of times, because Izzy was covering his lead hand from southpaw, and he'd drop his hands and walk forward. He was trying to do two things at the same time. You can drop your hands out of range and bring them back on top of the guy's hands, or you can walk forward with your hands up. You can't do drop your hands and walk forwards, and that has been getting him hurt a fair amount. So there was a little bit of that in this finish, but mostly he was just following Gane around the cage. He threw the high kick immediately, which I thought was a great idea. He always does, and it's always surprisingly fast and vicious. I was very sold on Gane's chances after he'd flicked him with a couple of jabs, and the commentators were saying, oh, he's not really landed that jab. But I was looking and going, he's having good success. And certainly Pereira's not showing any read on it or like useful movement to get out of the way of it. And then I was sold once Gane withdrew from the first calf kick. I was like, oh, yeah, he knows what he's dealing with. Because you've got guys like Yuri Prochaska and Jan Blachowicz and all sorts just coming out there and going, I shall check the calf kick. Oh, no, I didn't check the calf kick. Now I can't check the calf kick. It's just like, pull your fucking leg out of the way, make him miss, and then he's miles out of position. If you watch the second one he threw here, he misses, and it's a kick where, I've talked about this before, I did a video on it on the YouTube. He holds his hip back, which makes it hard to see coming, but he still throws it really hard, so it's not like he doesn't commit. So when he misses, he falls over himself, basically. And he's still got Yuri coming to the second fight being like, I hope he doesn't low kick me because I've done no preparation for that at all. I've been hitting a Makiwara in the woods. Yes, on the subject of post singles, Gane was doing that. He was hitting the lead shoulder with his jab and then trying to pick up the leg, which is the Frankie Edgar special, but it's so useful. And the guy has to respect it, because if he gives you the leg, if he gets up on one leg, you might take him down, get a freebie. Loads of guys, including Frankie Edgar, have picked up the post single and then dropped it to throw a high kick or something like that, and it works really well. Edgar, several times against BJ Penn, picked up that post single, started running BJ Penn backwards, and then stepped up into a left kick to the body, which is like the perfect mix of Muay Thai and MMA, because you're entering the single leg, you're attacking it like you're wrestling, and then you're going, oh, but actually I'm ploughing the fields, as is banned in the stadiums now in Thailand. There are a couple of uses of the twist kick, which I really like. I've been talking about this for ages. Cyril Gane, Imavov, they both use this kick from open stance. So when they're southpaw and the opponent's orthodox, they pick up their lead leg and they throw a front kick, but outwards. So they point their knee out to like 30 degrees, and the kick goes out and up. And it makes it almost impossible to parry from the outside, because you're not working with a straight line coming towards you. You're working with a line going up on an angle. And Gane was pulling from these head kicks beautifully. There was a great one where he pulled and he threw the low kick back. He was throwing the low kick on the inside of the lead leg, which you don't see an awful lot of. I talked about this before. I think I always say the good example is Leon Edwards against Kamaru Usman 3, but there's not that many. Inside thigh kick from open stance. Not very hard. I was going to say not useful, but can be useful. Very hard to make it look like your body kick and your high kick, because the target is further forward and off to the side slightly. So it's quite hard to sell them as part of a triple attack or a double attack. And they just don't have the fight finishing power that a good kick on the outside of the leg, whether you're talking calf kick or thigh kick, if you jar the knee inwards, that really does damage the opponent. Doesn't tend to happen in the same way with the inside or the shin kick. I mean, the shin kick, I watch guys do the shin kick and I wince every time. But then that Chinese lad snapped Tawan Chai's leg, and Tawan Chai's like one of the best Thai boxers in the world. And then finally, Pereira got a really good counter right hand off at the bell of the first round. Slipped the jab, or took the jab, can't remember, but he came back with a piston of a right straight. And I went, yes, that was nice. Came out for round two. Immediate level change by Gane to threaten the wrestling. Comes out of the clinch. Pereira tries to jump on him with the left hook and gets jabbed and falls down. I did like that Gane was jabbing with his head low, ready for the left hook to come around the outside. The moment Pereira's hurt, Gane starts hitting him in the back of the head. It's insane. This man has now won an interim UFC title, which we don't count as real titles, but he's won an interim UFC title by eye gouging the guy in the main title fight so that he couldn't be here. And now elbowing this guy in the back of the head about a dozen times. Herb Dean, drunk, thinking about the history of where he was. I don't know what he was doing. He was just useless. whatever you say, like that was the back of the head, someone will come along and like start from a position where the referee must have been right, and they'll go, well, here's the mohawk down the back of the head. And you're like, shut the fuck up. He's hitting him in the brainstem with elbows. And the reason Gane does this, I mean, he does it in every fight when the guy's hurt. He does it for the same reason Vitor Belfort used to do. If you watch Vitor Belfort versus Rich Franklin, I think it is, knocks him down, Franklin's on all fours, and he just punches down on the back of Franklin's head. Did it to Akiyama as well. Because there's this like better to ask forgiveness than permission thing in MMA where if you hit a guy, if you foul the shit out of a guy once he's already hurt, the referee's busy being like, when shall I stop this fight? And they don't feel, there's this enormous pressure that they don't feel they can break it and take the point or whatever, or warn you. And they should. But as it stands, if you knock a guy down in MMA, you can foul the shit out of him as long as it looks like he's just struggling to survive. But I actually lost count of how many blows there were to the back of the head here, because it was elbows to the brainstem, which is the classic. And then he stands up and he starts hammer fisting the back of the head. And I've never seen it more obvious. It's like the top of the neck. The very first thing they made illegal in boxing because people kept dying. And man, Pereira, tough as nails to walk through that and not just be like face down unconscious on the canvas. Because the other thing is you can't see it. Like half the way that people absorb blows is by being able to see them and subconsciously clenching up. But Gane drops him again, gets the finish. Like the Tom Aspinall one, a good performance marred by the performance. It's just, you can't. I have been talking about Cyril Gane since I watched him knocking out fatties in TKO back in the day, and I was going, damn, that guy moves incredibly for a heavyweight. And he's got frustrating habits in like his striking, you know, that are just technical stuff that you're like, oh, I can forgive it, but I wish he didn't do that. And then he's got frustrating habits where he just cheats all the time. And I say that because I was extremely impressed by this performance, and I was one of the few people giving him a chance against Tom Aspinall back when everyone was convinced that was going to be a foregone conclusion. And he was kicking Pereira's ass here, and he still cheated his ass off. I guess that's like elite heel behavior to not need to cheat and still cheat for love of the game. But it does get on my tits. Right, rest of the card. Garcia versus Lopes. I thought this was a good performance from Steve Garcia, and then just classic Diego Lopes. My footwork suck. My reactions suck, but I'm just going to throw back every time, and I'm tough as nails, and I hit like dynamite. Love Garcia's outfighting, though. Southpaw leaning forward of his center, like has his head over his lead leg. And then a lot of the time he skips his back foot up before lunging in with his lead foot, like a galloping step. And that's how he covers distance with his lead hand so phenomenally. So if you go back and watch a lot of those ones where he comes in with his lead hand, the back foot moves first. He starts in a long stance, back foot moves, and then he lunges in like a fencer. The oblique kick he uses as a southpaw to the inside of the opponent's knee because you can buckle the guy's leg outwards in the manner of a low single. Very powerful. Love that. Great up jabs. I did think after his left straight, he gets caught over the top of it with the open side counter quite a lot. And he throws himself out of position doing that too, which we're talking about again with Ruffy because he seems to do that deliberately. But double jabbed in and landed the left straight. Had Lopes on the fence a lot of the time, and that gave him freedom to just open up how he wanted to. And then by the end of the first round, every time Garcia moves, like fakes, Lopes is already throwing back the counter because that's what he does. He absorbs it and throws back. He doesn't have particularly fast eyes. So anytime Garcia faked, he could stop and Lopes would throw back an uppercut and a left hook at the air. But man, it doesn't matter because round two, Steve Garcia got a little bit too busy, got out of position throwing the left straight and got hit with a counter left hook and dropped and finished. And to be honest, I don't hate Lopez's punching mechanics on his left hook. He's got a really nice left hook. He's just a massive overachiever for how often he is losing the fights and then wins the fight. But he's a lot of fun, so you know we forgive him that. I also liked that he was throwing kicks in this fight quite a lot because by throwing those kicks, I particularly noticed because of those kicks. In his previous fights, he's been so hunched forward at the head, like his head's way forward of his hips, and it makes it very hard for him to move. And then when he kicks, he has to stand up first. So Volkanovski could see that coming a mile away. In this fight, I noticed because he was throwing a lot of kicks, he was already standing a bit more upright, which made him moving a bit easier as well. He was still on the fence the whole time, and his ring craft's not very good, but I did notice that he's done something to change the footwork problem. So respect. How would you have run it as how would you have won it as Steve Garcia? You'd have continued doing what you were doing, but not got chinned. Like he was putting on a blinder, and then he just got hurt out of position. I didn't do what's next for the main event, but what's next for these guys? Lopes probably, maybe Lerone Murphy, as he's just lost. And for Garcia, I'm sorry, mate. Ranked featherweights, they're all 50 now, and you just lost, even though you had an 8-fight streak or whatever. So it's back to the bottom of the pile with you. It was very funny that Greg Jackson wasn't here, and people were like, it was announced ages ago, Greg Jackson wouldn't be cornering. This is the first time they've had two elite fighters in forever, but he wasn't going to be cornering either Hokit or Garcia. And people were like, power to Greg Jackson, always standing up to the administration. I was like, you don't know why. He might have been like, Trump's too soft on Iran or something like that. People just projecting what they believe on. It might have been that he had like a family engagement that he had to go to. But that was the nature of this event. It was stupid White House stuff, but we're trying to talk about the fights, so we'll enjoy those first. Bo Nickal versus Carl Daukaus. I did like this. It was two southpaws, and Bo Nickal then switched to orthodox. Very basic, like did it right in front of Daukaus, which you don't really want. Stepped back into orthodox, and then he threw an overhand as he grabbed the leg, and the overhand went over Carl Daukaus' shoulder so that he could do a trap hook dump. If you go look that up on YouTube, very cool move. Ended up in the guard, landed a couple of good elbows just before the ref stood them up. It would have been a contentious stand-up, but he knocked him out shortly after. Hit him with a front kick to the face, which I think scraped Daukaus' eye, but Daukaus was busy saying, like, yeah, it didn't hurt me, as Bo Nickal jumped in and hit him with punches. Fine win for Bo Nickal. It's not particularly technical striking, but if you mix it in with the level changes, it will work. This is what's next for each. Bo Nickal could take a step up in opposition and it still wouldn't be very important. And Carl Daukaus is a fun guy, so they just keep him around fighting whoever. Chandler versus Ruffy. It basically was signed as an execution. Chandler has looked so bad lately. And he's a guy who had this really weird athleticism about him, or like incredible athleticism about him. And it hid a lot of the like having to learn stuff. I remember when he hit a shifting left hand on Benson Henderson. Like 5-6 years ago, and people were like, oh my god, he's evolving, he's so good. And it's like, no, he's just an athletic freak. Still got no jab, still got no setups, only has the overhand right stepping through into the overhand left, and a great double leg. And if you watched him in this fight, you really saw that he's still jacked as shit. He's still obviously way more athletic than many of us will ever be, but you saw how much his athleticism was holding together what he can do. Because his stance, when he stands in his stance, he's like ready to fall over. He was circling the cage and he immediately rolled his ankle before anything happened, which is crazy. But, when he tries to attack, he can't close the distance anywhere close to as fast as he used to because it's so technically fundamentally bad how he tries to close the distance, like leaning forward and lunging in behind his head. He tried to run in and level change on Ruffy, and Ruffy held his hand and pushed his face, and he almost fell over on his knees. Ruffy doing great stuff with his jab. The way he throws his right hand is very interesting because he often shifts through or like turns his shoulders through because I think he wants to spin off it. Anytime Chandler lost an exchange, he tried to run around the cage, and that just meant that it was really easy for Ruffy to corral him by the fence. If you remember the Fiziev fight, part of what Fiziev was doing well was getting Ruffy to the fence, because that takes away some of his options. When he puts you to the fence, again, we were talking about this with like high risk techniques, but if you're going to throw a wheel kick, if the guy's on the fence, the thing that's always going to go wrong on the wheel kick out in the open is that he's going to back away. Because anytime you start doing anything he doesn't recognize, he's just going to back away. Big wind up tell on a wheel kick. Yeah, he's going to see that coming and leave. The moment you put something at his back, he now has to decide whether that big spin is for a back fist, a back elbow, a back kick to the body that he might duck into. And he's got a split second to do that before you take his head off. So out in the open is a rock, paper, scissors game where the guy can go rock, paper, I don't feel like it, and walk off. Up against the fence, he actually has to engage you in rock, paper, scissors, and there's a good chance you're going to hurt him. Even Chandler ran through and got the double leg, Ruffy jumped up really easy. Just a massive athlete in his prime against an undersized, washed former athlete who shouldn't still be doing this. And I do kind of feel for him because he gave so much to get that Conor McGregor fight. And, you know, the moment after he signed this one, Conor McGregor announced he was going to fight Max Holloway. So just tragic, man. What's next for Ruffy? Well, believe it or not, Michael Chandler was still ranked. Crazy. Who's above him? Well, right now, Moicano, but he'll probably pass him. Dan Hooker. That sounds like a good fight for fun. Mateusz Gamrot, I could see him giving Gamrot a lot of trouble just by being massive and like tough to get to his legs. Then you get into the top end of it's like I said, aging guys like Max Holloway and Charles Oliveira. Justin Gaethje just won the belt, but is 38 and has stated he wants to get out of this soon. Arman Sarukin's really like the other young gun up there, and Ilia Topuria obviously coming down a few spots, but Ruffy's basically in the mix. He probably needs one more, provided nothing fucky happens with Gaethje going up to welterweight to fight Makhachev or something. What's next for Chandler? I don't think there's any point doing like how could Chandler have won this because you're working with so few things he can do now. But what's next for him? Hopefully retirement. They'll put him on the desk. He'll get a job. They'll make him the lobbyist to the next administration or whatever. But as long as I, person who whines straight to the fights, don't have to see him, I'm happy. Hokit versus Lewis. I mean, you know, Lewis is so washed. Turns up every time saying he's had the best camp of his life. The last one was a bad camp. Always looks like shit. Was gassed before the opening bell. World's easiest takedown comes at 2 minutes. There was one thing that was interesting in this was that Hokit was standing over him in mount, which Almeida did, but didn't do anything with. And the reason that guys are doing it against Derrick Lewis is that he's holding their wrists from mount, threatening to bridge them. And he's enormous. But when Almeida mounted Derrick Lewis, for example, this is something he always does. He bridges and rolls to his front, and they put their hands on the mat and like take his back. But he grabs their hand and then rolls onto his back with them on the backpack, removing all their ability to strike him. So he just has to stop them from choking him and then turn back into them, and then he can start ground and pounding them. And he does have very good ground and pound, and he's been doing it forever. But by standing over him in the mount, you can punch down on him, and he can't really do that. He bridged and turned. And all that happened was that Hokit just dropped back behind him and kept punching him from the turtle. Hokit whenever he turned to the turtle, Hokit never put in the hooks and got on his back because that's when he's going to roll and get on top of you again. So Hokit just did what he does, and then he got an arm bar, which he then held and sold like a pro wrestler because I think he probably bet on himself in the second round. You know, he had Eric Trump or one of the Trump brothers allegedly messaging Daniel Cormier, who now has to pretend that he fell for AI screenshots of his own texts, but asking if there's any fixed fights he can bet on. And then the other scandal is that someone just carried a fight with a fake submission on the White House lawn. Now, granted, Derrick Lewis is super strong. It might be really hard to extend his arm. I was just so not sold when he's got his knees flared out, and he's holding the extended arm, and he's going, like he's caught in Ric Flair's figure four. So yeah, it was a second round TKO by Derrick Lewis being gassed from the first round, as always. At the moment, he's Bob Sapp with more steps. O'Malley versus Zahabi was what a lot of people predicted. Like, Zahabi has had a good run, but he's fought a couple of three old dudes in a row, and he's put them under pressure. And he's got a really nice, like, in-type boxing game. Defends and blocks punches really well, comes back with combinations and knees on the end. And it's a really fun style. It works really well, but I was looking at this going, how's he going to deal with the kicking? How's he going to close off the kicks? And will he just run in behind his chin? Lo and behold, he did that. He was running up into low kicks and doing nothing else. And the game plan fell apart when Sean O'Malley went back to his corner and his coach said, yeah, anytime you see him take 2 steps, he's going to low kick you. There's nothing else to it. And then eventually he ran onto a couple of right hands and fell down. And Sean O'Malley hit the taunt and immediately walked off. And the ref had to be like, oh, it's over. You're going to kill this man. And Zahabi's like, no, I'm still fine. I'm here. I could have played guard. I could have wrapped him up and done something. Now, I think Zahabi was getting, he was looking much worse and very confused stylistically. But I don't think I think that knockout was very generous by the referee to award that. What's next for O'Malley? Well, what can they really do without moving him up the rankings? Because I didn't used to give this credence about them desperately wanting him to be champion, but they do seem to really want him like front and center. And I've not really seen any evidence that he is a superstar for them. But the only people ranked above him right now are Umar Marab and Piotr Jan. All of those are awful matchups for him because of the wrestling. Just below him is Corey Sandhagen, which is a match that he apparently doesn't want. Because they could have done that, 2 Americans against each other here on the White House, and Sandhagen was saying he wanted it. Yeah. What's next for Zahabi? I would say give him a lower ranked opponent who isn't ancient. He's just above Mario Batista, who needs something to do. But they'll probably give him like Davison Figueiredo, because like that's the other washed old man in the rankings right now. Or better yet, give him Raoni Barcelos, who is a washed old man, but is actually looking pretty good right now. Or Marcus McGee, who just came off a performance where he had a bit of a tune-up, but still sort of looked bad in the middle round. Oh, I forgot to do how would you have won that if you were Zahabi. I think the game plan had elements that I enjoyed, like getting to the legs, obviously is always a priority against O'Malley. Switching stances with him, that does work occasionally. It worked for Chito Vera. But I think there was no way he was going to win this off the back foot. I think that was a really bad strategic call to just keep going back to running around the cage. I think you've got to tuck your chin, bite your mouthpiece, and keep moving forward, because that's where he's had success before. Like letting guys punch at him. He's been very good at picking off the punches and then coming back with counter combinations. You know, O'Malley put him on the back foot, get him to the fence, threaten some takedowns and stuff. Like, but you got to walk forward to do that. He was trying to fight in that way that I'm always talking about, where guys freak themselves out and try and fight without engaging, where they try and run into a kick and then run away, or run into a punch and then run past the guy. And it's very, very rarely worked. Run up, kick, and then keep pushing forwards. You know, that's what you want to see. Not run up, kick, go back on completely defensive, backing onto the fence sort of behavior. But, you know, O'Malley hits really hard and he's much, much faster than the 3 old men that Zahabi's just beaten. So not a bad event. If you missed the preview, go listen to it, because I think it was pretty prescient on a few things. And if you're new here and you like my shit, I'll write articles and do an extra podcast every week. You can get that on my Patreon. And if you're an old timer here and you're still not on the Patreon, get on it, mate. Or else you'll miss my preview of... Oh, what is it? Oh, Horiguchi versus Cap. That's actually good. I was so ready for, I don't know, Katlyn Chikagian versus Derek Lewis or something like that. Actually, you should probably enjoy that. Ion Cutelaba, Navajo Sterling, Vinicius Oliveira, Andre Fili. It's not bad. I could get 30 good minutes of talking out of this. I'm your boy Jack Slack. You may be my boy, and I'll catch you when I catch you. Having another 6 terrible months of fights because the UFC wants to do a special event for the military next. Bless.